Episode 7 slowly builds pressure instead of rushing toward chaos. Every scene feels calm on the surface, but underneath, something is clearly wrong. Characters speak carefully, pauses last a little too long, and trust feels thinner than ever. The episode reminds us that in PLURIBUS, danger doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it comes through silence. As the story moves forward, we see characters making decisions that feel small at first, but those decisions quietly stack on top of each other. By the time we reach the final moments, it becomes clear that this episode was never about action. It was about positioning. Everyone is choosing where they stand before the truth fully comes out. What makes this episode powerful is how normal everything feels. Even as the story prepares for something irreversible, the final stretch of the episode strips away distractions and focuses only on intent. Conversations feel loaded, even when very little is said. One character's calm behavior stands out, not because it feels safe, but because it feels controlled. This is where the show begins to show us that power in PLURIBUS doesn't come from strength or fear, but from information and timing. The ending doesn't rely on shock. Instead, it relies on realization. Viewers slowly understand that something important has already happened before the final scene even begins. The real twist isn't what we see, but what we finally understand, too late. The episode trusts the audience to connect the dots without explaining them. As the ending unfolds, the meaning of earlier scenes starts to change. Lines that once felt harmless now feel like warnings. Looks between characters now feel like silent agreements or quiet betrayals. This is where PLURIBUS proves it's playing a long game. The ending is not about resolving a conflict, but about revealing the shape of one. Someone believes they are finally in control, but the episode leaves just enough doubt to make us question if that control is real or borrowed. The show refuses to tell us who is right and who is wrong. Instead, it forces us to sit with the discomfort of not knowing who to trust anymore. By the final moment, PLURIBUS, Episode 7, leaves us with a feeling rather than an answer. It's the feeling that something has shifted and cannot be undone. The world of the show now feels colder, more distant, and more dangerous than before. Relationships that once felt stable now feel fragile. Promises feel temporary. The ending works because it doesn't beg for attention. It lingers quietly. It asks the viewer to think, to question, and to Episode 7 isn't just an ending. It's a warning. From this point on, every choice will matter more, and every silence will mean something. The story has crossed a line, and there is no going back. Nothing in PLURIBUS Episode 7 screams danger out loud. And that's exactly why the ending feels so disturbing. The show doesn't shock you with explosions or sudden deaths. Instead, it lets the tension crawl under your skin and stay there. By the time the final moments arrive, you realize the danger was never coming later, it was already here, hiding in plain sight. The second half of Episode 7 slows the story down on purpose, and that slowdown is where the real meaning begins to surface. Scenes stretch longer than usual. Characters hold eye contact just a second too long. Words feel chosen carefully, like everyone is afraid of saying the wrong thing. This isn't filler time. This is the show telling us that something important is happening beneath the surface. In PLURIBUS, silence often speaks louder than action, and Episode 7 uses that silence as a weapon. Every calm moment feels heavy, as if the characters already know what the audience doesn't. One of the most striking things in this section is how normal everything appears. There is no clear crisis, no open fight, no obvious threat, but that normal feeling is false comfort. The show wants viewers to feel safe while slowly removing that safety piece by piece. Conversations feel polite, yet cold. Smiles don't reach the eyes. Even moments that should feel emotional come across as restrained. This tells us that characters are no longer reacting honestly. They are managing appearances. And when people start managing appearances, it means the truth has become dangerous. This part of the episode also makes it clear that power has shifted, even if no one says it out loud. One character begins to listen more than they speak. Another starts explaining too much, as if trying to stay in control through words. These small behavior changes matter. PLURIBUS has always been about control, but Episode 7 shows that control doesn't come from force. It comes from knowing when to stay quiet and when to let others reveal themselves. The ending only works because this section lays that groundwork so carefully. As scenes move closer to the finale, a strange sense of calm settles over the story. It feels like the calm before a storm, but the storm never fully arrives. Instead, the episode ends with restraint. That restraint is intentional. It tells us that whatever is coming next will be bigger than one episode can handle. The show is tightening the knot, not cutting the rope. By refusing to rush, Episode 7 forces viewers to sit with discomfort and uncertainty. What makes this section truly powerful is how it changes the meaning of earlier episodes. Looking back, you can see signs that things were always heading here. Trust was already cracking. Loyalties were already shifting. Episode 7 doesn't create new problems, it exposes the ones that were hidden. By the time the ending arrives, the audience realizes that the real conflict isn't about who wins or loses. It's about who understands the game and who is still pretending it doesn't exist. This section proves that Pluribus isn't interested in easy twists. It's interested in slow realizations, the kind that hit harder the longer you think about them. Episode 7 doesn't want you to jump out of your seat. It wants you to sit still and feel uneasy. And that unease is exactly what makes the ending so effective. The most unsettling part of Pluribus Episode 7 is not what happens at the end, but what suddenly makes sense because of it. The episode doesn't shout its message, it whispers it, and once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Section 3 is where the story quietly reveals its true shape, and everything you thought was simple becomes uncertain. As the final pieces fall into place, the episode forces us to rethink earlier moments that once felt harmless. Simple lines now sound like warnings. Casual decisions now feel planned. The show invites the viewer to look backward while moving forward, which is why the ending feels heavy instead of shocking. Pluribus uses memory as a tool. It asks you to remember who spoke first, who stayed silent, and who benefited from confusion. These details matter now more than ever. This section also reveals how deeply manipulation runs through the story. No one is fully honest anymore, not even with themselves. Characters aren't just hiding information from others, they're hiding it from the truth they don't want to face. The episode makes it clear that lies in Pluribus are rarely loud. They are soft, polite, and often delivered with good intentions. That's what makes them dangerous. By the time we reach the ending, we realize that the biggest threat isn't betrayal, it's comfort. Comfort allows characters to stop asking questions, and that silence creates space for control. One of the strongest ideas in this section is the illusion of choice. Several characters believe they are acting freely, but the episode shows us that their paths were shaped long before Episode 7 began. Decisions feel personal, yet they follow patterns that suggest planning and influence. This raises an uncomfortable question for the audience. Were these characters ever truly in control, or were they guided into believing they were? The ending doesn't answer this directly, but it leaves clues that suggest the truth is far more disturbing than a simple yes or no. Emotionally, this section strips away any sense of safety. Even moments meant to feel hopeful carry a quiet tension. The show avoids music cues or dramatic framing, choosing instead to let scenes breathe. That breathing space is intentional. It gives the audience time to notice what's missing: honesty, warmth, and trust. Relationships that once felt solid now feel fragile, held together by habit rather than loyalty. Episode 7 doesn't break these relationships openly, it lets them slowly fade, which feels far more real and painful. By the time this section ends, Pluribus has fully shifted its tone. The story is no longer about reacting to events. It's about understanding systems, how people are moved, guided, and controlled without ever realizing it. The ending doesn't mark a conclusion, it marks awareness. The audience is now aware of the rules of this world, even if the characters are not. And once that awareness exists, the show can no longer be watched the same way. Section 3 is where Pluribus stops asking what happened and starts asking why it happened. It challenges viewers to question motives, patterns, and silence. This is the point where the story becomes deeper, colder, and far more dangerous. And that's exactly why the ending lingers long after the screen goes dark. By the time Pluribus Episode 7 reaches its final phase, the story no longer feels like it's moving forward, it feels like it's closing in. Section 4 is where emotions stop being loud and start becoming heavy. Nothing explodes, nothing collapses, yet everything feels different. This is the moment where the audience understands that a line has been crossed, even if no one says it out loud. In this part of the episode, the true emotional weight of the ending begins to settle. Characters act as if things are normal, but their behavior tells a different story. They avoid certain topics, redirect conversations, and move carefully around one another. This isn't fear in the usual sense. It's awareness. They know something has changed, and they don't know how to undo it. Pluribus shows us that the most dangerous moments are not when people panic, but when they accept a new reality without fully understanding it. One powerful element in this section is how relationships are quietly reshaped. Trust isn't broken with arguments or anger. It fades through distance. The way characters stand apart, the way they stop sharing thoughts, and the way they choose silence over honesty all signal that bonds are weakening. Episode 7 doesn't rush this process. It lets the distance grow naturally, which makes it feel real. The ending hits harder because it feels earned, not forced. This section also highlights how consequences in Pluribus are rarely immediate. There is no instant punishment, no clear reward. Instead, the cost of choices shows up emotionally. A character who believed they were doing the right thing now looks uncertain. Another who seemed unsure now appears calm, almost prepared. These emotional shifts tell us who understands the situation and who is still catching up. The show uses faces, pauses, and body language to communicate what words never could. What truly defines Section 4 is the sense of finality without closure. The episode ends without giving the audience a clear answer, but it gives them a clear feeling. That feeling is loss. Not the loss of a person, but the loss of innocence. The world of Pluribus no longer feels open or hopeful. It feels structured, controlled, and watched. The ending makes it clear that from this point on, every action will carry weight, and every mistake will matter more. This section also prepares the audience for what comes next by removing comfort. There is no promise that things will improve. There is no reassurance that characters will find their way back to each other. Instead, the episode leaves us with tension that hasn't been released. That tension becomes the engine for future episodes. It keeps the story alive in the viewer's mind long after it ends. Section 4 proves that Pluribus doesn't rely on spectacle to leave an impact. It relies on emotional truth. The ending works because it respects the audience's intelligence and patience. It trusts viewers to feel the shift, to recognize the danger, and to understand that this story is now entering its most serious phase. What comes next won't be about surprises. It will be about consequences. And Episode 7 makes sure we're ready for them. By the end of Pluribus, Episode 7, the story stops feeling like a puzzle and starts feeling like a warning. Section 5 is where the episode quietly shows its hand. Not through dialogue, but through details that many viewers might miss on a first watch. This part of the ending is subtle, but it carries the deepest meaning. This section is built on symbols rather than statements. The show uses space, movement, and repetition to speak for the characters. Certain locations are revisited, but they no longer feel the same. What once felt safe now feels exposed. What once felt private now feels observed. These changes are not accidents. Pluribus uses its environment to reflect what's happening internally. As control tightens around the characters, the world around them feels smaller and more restricted. One of the most important elements in this section is repetition. The same words, gestures, or situations appear again, but with slightly different energy. This repetition shows that the characters are stuck in a cycle they don't fully understand. They believe they are moving forward, but the story suggests they are being guided along a path already chosen for them. The ending doesn't say who built this path, but it strongly suggests that it exists, and once you notice it, it's impossible to ignore. Silence plays a major role here as well. Moments that could have been filled with dialogue are left empty. These empty spaces force the audience to pay attention to what's unsaid. A character choosing not to respond becomes more meaningful than any speech. A pause becomes a decision. In Pluribus, silence is not absence's intention. Episode 7 uses silence to show us who holds power and who is slowly losing it. This section also brings plus symbolism through contrast. Light and shadow are used to separate knowledge from ignorance. Characters who understand more are often framed differently from those who don't. This visual language tells a story within the story. It suggests that awareness comes at a cost, and that cost is isolation. Those who see the truth clearly are often the most alone. The ending hints that understanding the system doesn't free you from it. It only shows you how trapped you really are. What makes Section 5 especially strong is how it refuses to explain itself. The show trusts the audience to feel the meaning rather than hear it. These symbols don't provide answers. They raise deeper questions. Who is watching? Who is guiding events? And most importantly, why are the characters still playing along? Episode 7 doesn't accuse its characters. It observes them, the same way the system within the show seems to observe everything by the time this section ends. Pluribus has fully transformed from a character-driven drama into a story about systems and control. The ending isn't meant to shock, it's meant to linger. It invites rewatches, discussions, and doubt. Section 5 reminds us that the most powerful stories are not the ones that explain everything, but the ones that change how you see what came before. The final message of Pluribus Episode 7 isn't delivered through a cliffhanger or a dramatic reveal. It comes through realization. Section 6 is where the episode stops looking inward and starts pointing forward. The ending doesn't close doors, it quietly locks them, forcing the story into a new phase that cannot be undone. This section is all about setup. Episode 7 doesn't try to finish a story. It prepares the ground for what's coming next. The choices made near the end may seem small, but they reshape the future of every character involved. Alliances that once felt flexible now feel fixed. Lines that could be crossed before now feel guarded. The episode makes it clear that the freedom characters once had is shrinking, even if they don't realize it yet. One of the most important ideas here is inevitability. The show suggests that events are no longer random or reactive. They are moving in a direction that feels planned. Characters continue acting as if they still have room to change their fate, but the ending hints that the window for real choice is closing. This creates a sense of quiet urgency. Nothing explodes, but time itself feels tighter. Every delay feels dangerous. This section also sets up future conflict by changing the balance of power. Someone who appeared weak now seems protected. Someone who seemed confident now feels exposed. These shifts aren't announced. They are shown through behavior. The way characters hesitate, the way they stop asking certain questions, and the way they accept unclear answers all signal that control has changed hands. The audience is meant to notice this before the characters do. Emotionally, Section 6 removes the last traces of comfort. There is no reassurance that things will turn out okay. Instead, the ending leaves us with tension that hasn't been released. This tension becomes the driving force for the next episodes. It creates anticipation without giving away the destination. The show doesn't promise resolution. It promises consequences. What makes this section especially effective is how it connects back to the very beginning of the series. Ideas that were introduced early, choice, identity, unity, now feel more complex and darker. Episode 7 suggests that those ideas were never simple truths, but tools used by those in control. This realization reframes the entire story. Viewers are encouraged to question not just what will happen next, but what has been happening all along. Section 6 ends with the understanding that Pluribus has crossed into its most dangerous stage. From here on, the story won't be about discovery. It will be about survival. Characters will have to decide whether to keep playing by the rules or risk everything to break them. And the ending of Episode 7 makes one thing clear: there will be no easy way out.